What is the hidden meaning of the cave paintings on Dragonstone? Is Drogon poisoned? Why did Dany only use one dragon to attack the Lannister wagon train? And why did Bran give the catspaw dagger to Arya? Hi everyone, this is Robert. Welcome to Deep Geek. Please do consider subscribing if you enjoy the video. This is my Q&A video for episode 4 of season 7. I'll be answering the most popular questions put to me by my patrons and in the comments sections to my videos. There's a lot to get through this week, so let's get straight into it. First of all, lots of people asked if I could talk a bit more about the symbolism in the cave paintings. This is a big issue, and I'll probably do a longer video on the symbolism in Game of Thrones more broadly at some point. But as an overview, there seem to be 3 different kinds of cave painting here, and they seem to be very different in terms of their sophistication. The first are some repeated symbols carved rather crudely in 2 dimensions. Second, there are some figures that Jon says are the first men and the children of the forest. They have a bit more detail, but there is no obvious differentiation between each figure. And third, there are pictures of the White Walkers and the Night King in 2 or 3 different colours, with an attempt at 3-dimensionality and clear differentiation between the characters. So, all else being equal, we should probably assume that the images were drawn in this rough chronological order. The crudest images first, and the more sophisticated ones later. Let's look at them in order. First, the symbols. There are 2 discernible symbols that are recreated a few times in slightly different styles. Both of these are recognisable to Game of Thrones fans. There's the swirling pattern that we saw in the standing stones when the first White Walker was created, and then made again by the White Walkers many millennia later. And second, there is the circle with a line through it, like the Greek letter phi that the Targaryens like to wear, and is very reminiscent of the Hand of the King brooch, and again is made by the White Walkers back in Season 1, Episode 1. Screen Prism has previously done an excellent video on how these 2 symbols are linked by the golden ratio, the ratio of phi. So I won't go over that here, and I've left a link in the description below if you want to check it out. For now, it's enough to say that if George R.R. Martin's world is similar to ours in terms of basic physics, then these symbols represent one of the most fundamental ratios in nature. This should not surprise us. If the children of the forest made these symbols, as we are led to believe, then they are some of the most in tune with nature beings in this world. It is completely natural that their imagery should also be in tune with nature. The fact that the White Walkers later recreate these symbols suggests a lot. It tells us that they are focused on their creation in the centre of the standing stones in the spiral pattern, and that they are focused on their creators, the children of the forest. And there is one other thing we should note about these symbols, because they appear again and again throughout Game of Thrones. They represent bringing life from death, in both fire and ice. In the very first episode, the White Walkers placed the bodies of the dead in a circular pattern in ice. They then bring them back as whites. Dany places her stone-cold dragon eggs in the centre of the same pattern in fire and gives birth to dragons. And this happens again and again. As I said, I will do a full video on this when I get the time, but the theme is clear. Both sides of this divide between ice and fire use these symbols to bring life from death. There is an equivalence, a song of ice and fire, and a balance is needed. Second, we have the pictures of the children of the forest and the first men. What I find interesting here is that both symbols we were just looking at appear right next to the pictures of the first men. So the children obviously associated both symbols with them, and we see that particularly the phi symbol has been adopted time and again by thematically important people like the Targaryens when they appointed the Hand of the King, or the Starks. See here how Sansa has also, probably unconsciously, adopted the symbol. Finally, we have the White Walkers. These pictures are separate to the rest. Jon has to guide Dany over to them, and they are a lot more detailed. This chronology matches up to what we know of Westerosi history. First, there were the Children of the Forest with their crude nature-based symbols. Then the first men arrived. Then the White Walkers attacked, with these events separated by thousands of years. No wonder the White Walkers' pictures are more sophisticated. There is one thing here I would want to draw your attention to, though, and that is the Night King's beard. And the thing I would want to highlight is that he has one. The Night King that we have seen hasn't got a beard. So does this mean that the Night King we have now isn't the same as the one that attacked humanity the first time around? Or just that the White Walker's hair grows like everyone else? Was the first Night King killed and replaced by someone clean-shaven? Or did he survive and just fancy a change in style? It's not even slightly clear. More than anything else, this throws up questions, not answers. But as interesting as they are, I think that these cave paintings have now largely served their purpose in the narrative, to support Jon's stories as he tries to persuade Dany to join up. It would have been useful if they had included some ancient knowledge about how the original War for the Dawn was won, for example, but that doesn't seem to be the case here. Perhaps Bran can get that from the memories in the weirwood trees. Bright Eyes 149 and Alfarid Hussein asked if Qyburn's anti-dragon ballista was poisoned. Well, we obviously don't know for sure because we didn't see the bolts being treated with anything, or Qyburn suggest he was going to do it. And of course, the preview trailer for episode 5 clearly shows Drogon apparently alive and well and back on Dragonstone, so if he is poisoned, then it is clearly a slow-working one that doesn't affect him flying. But there are a few hints that poison might be at play here. Qyburn and Cersei are definitely both getting into poisons after we saw how she decided to kill Tyene, and they named the ballista the Scorpion, which might just be because they've always called ballistae that in Westeros, or it might be a hint that it carries a sting in its tail. And there's also a potential symmetry here between Drogo and Drogon, who Dany named him after. Drogo won a fight, but effectively died from an infected wound near his shoulder sometime later. Could this happen to Drogon too? Finally, there is also a plot imperative at stake here. Somehow, at some point, the dragons must prove to be vulnerable. If they don't, then Dany will just destroy everything in her way and take control, and that easy victory doesn't seem to be George R.R. Martin's style. If it doesn't happen now, then it will soon. But does all this add up to Drogon being poisoned? Probably not. However, it probably is a sort of light foreshadowing that the dragons are vulnerable, and that at some time in the next 2 or 3 episodes someone will deal some serious damage. Probably not to Drogon, as he has some serious plot armor with Dany, but perhaps one of the others. Eric Smith and Ashley Wilkerson asked why Dany only took one dragon to take on the Lannister army. This is a good question. I can understand leaving one dragon at Dragonstone, but not 2 if she's going into battle. However, I think this is just a simple case of the showrunners trying to protect their budget. 2 dragons would have taken up twice the CGI budget. We've seen this happen elsewhere. For example, there was no reason at all for Ghost not to have fought in the Battle of the Bastards, other than resource constraints. It's disappointing, but the showrunners do need to work within the budget they are given, so perhaps we shouldn't be too hard on them. And this time, I don't think it made much of a difference to the plot. The battle was a massacre with only 1 dragon. Any more wouldn't have made much difference. HD90Dog asked whether Bran gave the catspaw dagger to Arya because he knows she will kill Littlefinger with it. Given how expressionless Bran is at this moment, it's hard to work out exactly what his motivations are, or indeed how well he is doing in trying to piece together all the fragments of memory and vision that are swirling around in his head. That said, the fact that he brought the dagger out to the Godswood rather than just leave it in his room suggests that he probably did decide earlier that he wanted to give it to her, rather than decide it on the spur of the moment. So there's probably a reason, even if that reason is just exactly what he says it is, because he has no use for it, and Arya has. Bran definitely can see into the future in fragments, and indeed may not even have as strong a grasp on being in the present as we might expect. The description of weirwood trees that the three-eyed raven gives to Bran in the books is that time is different to them. Sun and soil and water are things that a weirwood understands, not days and years and centuries. So when Bran is turning the dagger over in his hands, he is probably not working out what to do with it next, but trying to understand what role it plays. And by implication, the role it plays is to be with Arya, not him. And we all know what Arya does with daggers. And there is no disputing the poetic justice there would be in killing Littlefinger with it. So, yes, I think there is a good chance that Bran gave it to Arya for that very purpose. But his mode of thinking is very different to ours. He doesn't give it to her so that she will do something. He gives it to her because that is who she is, and what she does, and what she will do. Probably. What do you think about these issues? Let me know in the comments below. If you'd like to support me in making these videos, the best way to do it is through Patreon, and I've got a great community starting to grow over there. And of course, if you want to know when my next video comes out, then please click on the subscribe button and make sure your notifications are enabled. Thanks for watching. That's all for this time. I'll see you again soon.